1999 The Podcast is a production of the Cage Club Podcast Network. For more podcasts on movies, comics, and all things pop culture, head to cageclub.me. To contact us with questions, comments, or just to say hi, send us an email at 1999@cageclub.me. You can find me on Twitter at probablyrealjb and Joey at soulpopped. And you can follow the show on Twitter at 1999 The Podcast. To support the show, please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. The show is written, produced, and edited by us. Welcome to 1999 The Podcast. I am John Brooks.
And I am Joey Lewandowski, living inside John Brooks' head temporarily for 15 minutes at a time.
Wow, I wonder why you're saying that. Joey, how are you?
I thought for a second that I spoiled what, but like the name of the movie's in the episode. I didn't spoil anything. I'm good. How are you?
I know. But there's still like the nice lead up. In case you just go in blind. You just, whatever.
Like I listen to podcasts that like reset after breaks. So like, and then they were aware that like, why are we doing that? Like nobody's jumping into a podcast in the middle, like not knowing where we are. So,
well, you may have figured out what the episode is, but I'm good. I have some really exciting personal news to share with you.
Okay.
Joey. Okay. So, and this is like a ballpark figure, right? You don't have to like know the exact number here. But if I were to have said to you, let's say 2 weeks ago, how many people who were in attendance at my wedding have been a guest on Alex Jones? What would your number?
I would have guessed 0, but I'm guessing that number is now 1.
Well, it was 0 a couple weeks ago. You would have been right. That number has moved to 1. So that was a trip.
Was this someone that you invited or that Courtney invited?
This is someone who was a friend of both of ours and also a girlfriend of one of my good friends at the time.
Wait, so would she have gotten an invite? Was she a +1, or even if they weren't dating, would she have gotten still an invite either way?
She probably would have gotten an invite.
Okay, so there's no there's no real blame. Like it's sort of a shared, this is something that we all created kind of situation.
I feel like you've met this person, but I don't know. But I'll tell you the story.
Can you say her name and then bleep it out?
I will. Yeah, her name is...
Oh, okay. I have stories about her, but yeah, that's fascinating.
So that gets bleeped out, so you guys won't know who we're talking about. But yes, Joey does know this person. So
I had a crush on this person for one day, and then I embarrassed myself terribly.
Yeah. I listened to Knowledge Fight, which is a show about InfoWars and about Alex Jones. Our friend Amanda Moore has been on that show, actually. Yeah, and I was listening to it a couple weeks ago or like a week ago, and towards the last segment of the show, they talk about how Alex is a special guest that day, and I'm like, okay, who is it? And then they're like, it's some comedian named, and then name of person. And I was like, are you fucking shitting me?
What do they talk about?
Oh, it's bad. They talk about the midterms. She makes some very unfunny like sex jokes. They make fun of LGBTQ people.
Her
weird.
Twitter handle has the flag emoji in it, like her display name.
She was at January 6th. She's gone full MAGA.
Oh, she's now up. She has 90,000 followers. Jesus. Okay.
Yeah. So
maybe this is my fault. If I had not gotten so drunk that one day and gotten, let's just say, sick and embarrassed myself, maybe I could have saved her.
It's funny because she says in the episode, like one of the clips that...
Did you talk about
Dan
me?
and Jordan... Yeah, it's mostly about you. What Dan and Jordan talk about in the episode, one of the clips that they have in is this part where she is talking about like why she's not a feminist anymore, because she got brainwashed by the libs or whatever. And one of the things she cites is like, it's great to be a feminist until you need someone to install an air conditioner. And so I texted my friend who used to date her, be like, oh, you should have installed that air conditioner, man. Like that would have, the different path. Would have been
sliding doors of MAGA.
Yeah.
Is Sliding Doors a 1999 movie? When is that?
It's not. That's like 98 or 2000.
98.
It's not 99.
So close.
Yeah, real close.
One production hiccup, we could have done it.
If we get through all of these movies, maybe we'll start on 98 and go backwards through time.
My one friend, my co-host over on How to Win the Lottery, said after we do this, which you know, if there
There
were
isn't an
another,
after we do this.
if
There's
if there were
yeah.
another podcast that covered this that has been going for 5 years, like they're still doing this project, right? But he's like, you should just call it
Mhm.
Yearbook and just do another year. I'm like, yeah, maybe, but like there are so many movies.
Yeah, I've done some of the math, and we are in our like late 70s by the time this thing's over. So, sure, we'll move on to a different year at some point. I don't know. Maybe we'll just get bored of this year, but who knows? Anyway, so I bring that up because it was a very meta out of body experience to hear that on one of my favorite podcasts, and I'm still not quite over it. And of course, Courtney got home, and I'm like, "You must come with me and listen to this thing."
Mm-hmm. Now, did you go and listen to the actual, like the full interview, or no?
Oh God, no! I could barely get through what they edit down on the. But it's great because Dan and Jordan, who have never heard of her before, figure her out entirely in a matter of minutes and are just dunking on her the entire time, which
Good.
is really, really wonderful. So yeah, she sucks, and that's that. Terrible person, bad comedy, bunch of racism, and she sucks. Anyhow, that brings us to movie time. We are now in October the 29th. Award season is just beginning when we get to today's movie.
But as a reminder, we're not going chronologically in season 2. We're bouncing all over the place. We're alphabetical in season 2.
We are alphabetical. Yes. So, although there's a weird fact about this movie that I'm going to bring up that ties it to our last two movies in a really strange way. Today's movie is the feature film directing debut of one Adam H. Spiegel, better known as Spike Jonze with a Z, as well as the screenwriting debut of Charlie Kaufman, who would again later work with Jones on 2002's Adaptation, which, Joey, fun fact, there's a fun fact about Adaptation while we're here. And do you know what I'm referring to?
That Nicolas Cage is in it and we're on the Cage Club Podcast Network. Is that what you're talking about?
You are on the right track.
Well, I think a lot of what I was thinking about while watching this movie, and we'll talk about it in the episode, is the interplay between like Spike Jonze and Charlie Kaufman, and also kind of lumping in there, oh God, what's his name? Be Kind, Rewind, Kidding.
Oh, we suck.
Jesus Christ. His name is...
He directs music videos and is French, and his name
Michel
is...
Gondry, yes.
Michel Gondry.
But like, I feel like they're all of a certain kind of ilk. I don't mean that condescendingly, because I think they all make like movies that are unlike any other movie, but I was thinking about like how they've all like worked with each other on different projects in different ways, and some have written and directed, some have just directed, some have just written, and whatever. And Adaptation is one, and I feel like there's just like there's themes, and then there's like meta themes, and there's like objects and stuff that carry over from movie to movie. So other than Nicolas Cage playing, I guess, two characters and whatever, but no, what's the fun fact you were talking about?
Well, the fun fact has nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with the fact that Adaptation was the first time I ever appeared on the Cage Club Podcast Network.
Oh.
That's
exciting.
It was the Cage Club episode that I did because I'm a big fan of that movie. And I don't remember what I said about it, but I think it was mostly positive. So
that is my third favorite Nicolas Cage movie.
There you go. So yeah, Loathe many years ago, the very first time I was on your network was for that movie.
Our network. But my network too.
Yeah. One. Anyway, today's movie stars, ready for this? John Cusack, John Malkovich, Catherine Keener, John Malkovich, Cameron Diaz, John Malkovich, Charlie Sheen, John Malkovich, Orson Bean, John Malkovich, and John Malkovich as John Malkovich. Today's film, Joey, is being John Cusack. Malkovich.
Well, so there's another podcast, not on our network, but Con Air the podcast, which is also a Nicolas Cage movie, but I was just on an episode of theirs. They are breaking that movie down by sort of DVD chapter by DVD chapter, but we were talking about, I had mentioned this show, I'm like, oh, we're going to do Being John Malkovich, and obviously John Malkovich is Cyrus the Virus, like Cusack too. I was like, oh, right. Like, I forgot, like, I haven't seen this movie since college probably, so I forgot that Cusack is like the main character ostensibly, because when you think about this from afar, like a satellite view, it's all Malkovich.
Yeah. There's a lot of Malkovich here, including a scene where literally everybody is Malkovich. So, all right. Well, now I turn to you. I ask this question completely with the understanding that I have seen this movie several times
Yeah.
and would still struggle to adequately answer the question. But Joey, what is Being John Malkovich about?
Well, I think what's interesting, and I actually, while watching this, I was thinking about The Simpsons that I've been watching for the first time, and I'm now in season 13, 14. I don't know. I'm deep into The Simpsons now. But I was thinking about how every Simpsons episode, when it starts, is not actually what it's about. And I know it's just like traditional screenwriting structure where the
Yeah.
first act is a thing.
The 5 minute
Yes.
non-plot. That right. That's, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so the movie starts with John Cusack as a puppeteer seeking new work and finds a job at a filing company. And that's the whole act one. And I feel like I would be okay with that as a movie on its own. Like this weird, everybody's like a character, but not a character in an annoying way, a character in a way that like is endearing and fun. And then all of a sudden, behind a filing cabinet, he finds a portal into the mind of John Malkovich, where if you walk down this portal, you are able to spend 15 minutes inside the head of John Malkovich, watching what he watches, thinking what he thinks, so on and so forth. He and Catherine Keener, who is not a co-worker but works in the building or something, I don't exactly know what she does, they start a business where they have people pay them to live as John Malkovich for 15 minutes. And then there's a love triangle or a love square, I guess, between. This is not really a good plot summary, but it's hard to say.
I could not do this well. Keep going. You're doing great. Yep.
Cusack is married to a very mousy Cameron Diaz. They both fall in love with Catherine Keener, who falls in love with John Malkovich, but only John Malkovich, as either one of them is inside his body, because she loves being loved by two people at the same time. And we jump forward in time to a point where John Malkovich has retired from acting, and Cusack, as Malkovich, is a puppeteer, profiting and becoming world renowned and revitalizing the game. It's kind of like that Mr. Show sketch where sales of ventriloquist dummies and like ventriloquists are like the biggest thing in the country, but except now it's puppeteers, and the East Coast West Coast puppeteer rap battle. And it then, it becomes this even more sort of sci-fi, as though that were in sci-fi and fantasy enough. It becomes even more sci-fi and fantasy about this whole group of people who know about this and are manipulating this and waiting for the right time to embody the literal body of John Malkovich, to live in him forever until the next vessel is ready.
Bravo, sir. That was very, very good. I'm most impressed.
There's a lot going on, man.
Being John Malkovich, Joey, may well be the 1999est movie we have covered yet on this show. And the only reason it didn't make it into the first 9, and that's just barely, is one, that it really kind of took some time to fully sink into the culture. So kind of like Fight Club in that respect. And two, unlike Fight Club, it's really kind of been marginalized in recent years, which I think is due in no small part to the successive work of both Jones and Kaufman, which we've talked about earlier on, who produced films that would go on to greater critical and commercial success than this one did, including, of course, the aforementioned adaptation. I think it's kind of been overshadowed by both of their successive careers.
Yeah, like we'll talk about it in the episode, obviously, but like this, I can't really put my finger. Like I do love this movie, but I can't put my finger on. There's something about it that just doesn't fully connect with me, and I think it's just because like they're not as good at filmmaking as they would become. Even though if like almost anyone else made this movie, be like, oh my god, can you believe that this? Like, you can still say, can you believe this exists? But the fact that they like go on and make even better and more coherent, and even at the same time less coherent, but in a good way, kind of movies, it's tough. Like they're their own worst enemy in a way.
Yeah, and this one explores many of the same issues that films like The Matrix and Fight Club explore, though with a much more sort of insane glee than those films have. And it seems like the kind of movie that could only hit theaters during the Y2K end times paranoia, when the whole culture sort of shared a, I don't know, fuck it kind of attitude that would allow for this movie to be made and shown in mainstream theaters. A lot of people were excited to see Jones make the jump from music videos to features. Like Fight Club director David Fincher, he had directed a ton of music videos for the likes of the Beastie Boys, including, of course, the legendary Sabotage video, the greatest music video ever made. Bjork, Weezer, and REM, to name a few. And speaking of my favorite band, REM, whose members had a remarkably busy year at the movies in 1999, which we will talk about later.
This is the thing that blows my mind when I saw this name in the credits. Go ahead.
Malkovich was produced by his fellow famous bald person, REM lead singer Michael Stipe, who also Joey produced one of my favorites from 1999, the documentary American Movie, about which we will talk
Is that the thing that you
in
quote
the
tweeted
next
recently?
round. It is.
Okay.
It is. Have you seen that movie?
No.
Oh, you're going to fucking love it. I love that movie so much.
Well,
And
something that
I
we
can't
talk
wait.
about on Too Fast is Joe, especially me, because there's a lot of things that we watch on Too Fast that I've watched before and I want to watch again, but like a lot of things that he's seen for the first time, some stuff that I'm seeing for the first time, but like knowing that we have a podcast where we're watching the Fast and Furious movies and movies in the realm, like since we started, we're like, oh, there's no reason for us to watch a Vin Diesel movie because eventually we're going to watch it on the show, right? So like neither of us have seen Triple X. And so the same thing with here. Like I'm not going out and watching more 1999 movies, even though I think I should, just because I know I'm going to get to them eventually. So everything I came into this podcast with is the knowledge I have right now. So no American movie for me.
There you go. Spike Jonze, meanwhile, was also had also made his first major acting appearance in '99, starring alongside George Clooney, Mark Wahlberg, and Ice Cube in David O. Russell's Three Kings, which of course we'll also get to later on in the podcast. As for Kaufman, he remained a relatively unknown talent at the time, having written for Chris Elliott's obscure early 19s cult sitcom Get a Life, which I love, full disclosure, followed by, in 1992, Fox's first failed attempt to elbow in on Saturday Night Live, the sketch comedy series The Edge, starring Tom Kenny, speaking of Mr. Show, Julie Brown, Wayne Knight, and someone named Jennifer Aniston, in addition to the legendary failure that was The Dana Carvey Show, and Fox's failed attempt to elbow in on Friends, Ned and Stacy, starring a post-Wings Thomas Hayden Church and a pre-Will and Grace Deborah Messing. So that's not much to go on in terms of Charlie Kaufman's writing career at the time that he writes this movie, which is really interesting because the whole movie hinged on them hiring one very specific actor for the role, or else the whole thing kind of doesn't work.
Well, I was going to wonder, I don't know if you want to talk about that now or later. I'm sure you have the research, but like if Malkovich said no, would they have done a being Denzel Washington or something?
I don't know. From what I've learned, Malkovich like got the script and the idea and was like, that sounds cool, but I don't want to be forever associated with this movie. Like, I don't want this to be like, oh, John Malkovich from being John Malkovich, and that's all people know me for, which of course is like not like absurd because we know him from lots of things.
Yeah, like that Jewel movie.
Yeah, the Jewel Heist movie that he's in. But he read the script and he's like, no, this is great. I'll do it. Right. So turned out that wasn't a problem. But if you're basically a workman writer, it's sort of like weird to be like, I'm going to write this movie that requires.
Well, because what's weird about it is that it both feels like it has to be Malkovich and then also could be literally any actor.
Right. But there is something very much that's like Malkovich about this. We'll talk about this later in the episode, but like, yeah, for sure. The lunacy of being John Malkovich may have been too much for audiences, but the movie still did turn a profit. Filmed somehow for just $13 million, which also, Joey, as I said, was like the same budget as 10 Things I Hate About You and American Pie. So we're in a weird stretch here. The movie made almost $23 million domestically and just a tiny bit internationally for a total box office of $23,106,667. I like the 7 at the end because that means one guy was like, no, there's one more ticket to buy here. Because that was the price of movie tickets back in 1999. It was, however, one of the most critically acclaimed films of the year. This I actually didn't know. I was very surprised to read these numbers. It holds a 94% Rotten Tomatoes score with 133 reviews and an 87% audience score with 250,000 ratings.
Well, I feel like with this one, it's like I don't think you can say this is bad. I think you can say that you don't get it. But I don't think you can look at any part of this movie and be like, no, that's not good. Like, I think it looks beautiful. It makes sense if you can wrap your head around it. All the acting is great. Like the specificity and weirdness of the world is all great. So I'm not surprised. Maybe that's still really high. I'm not super surprised by it though.
There are some people who seem to like it too much. There's nobody who hates it outright, and I'll get to that in a second. Its Metacritic score is 90, which is fucking nuts.
That's
and it has
crazy.
An audience score of Metacritic on 8.7. By the way, I don't know why Metacritic uses 100% scale for critics, but like a 10 scale for audiences.
I don't either, but I like it better than Rotten Tomatoes, so I'm not going to look that gift horse ? In the mouth.
Sure, it just doesn't make much consistent sense. Anyway, Roger Ebert, our old friend, named it the best movie of 1999, just ahead of Magnolia, and then, interestingly enough, Three Kings, and then, Unfortunately, Joey, his number 4 movie of that year was Boys Don't Cry, and said in his review, either Being John Malkovich gets nominated for Best Picture or the members of the Academy need portals into their brains. Spoiler, it was not nominated for Best Picture, but I'll get to that in a second. Lou Lemonick of the New York Post said Being John Malkovich is, quote, far more than a must-see movie. It's a must-see more than once event.
Oh, I thought there's a real opportunity for a must-experience movie, but
I know.
drop the ball.
I don't feel like that really did it justice. And Elizabeth Weitzman of film.com said of the movie and of the subject of this podcast, Joey, quote, if we're allowed just a couple of truly singular discoveries in 12 months, it's a good year. When one of them is a film as exhilarating as Spike Jonze' feature debut, it's a banner year. Sure is, Elizabeth. I agree. So, did anyone hate Being John Malkovich? Well, the answer is not really. Mike Clark of USA Today complained that the movie was overlong, and I should note that he said that about a movie that is 1 hour and 53 minutes long. And in a reluctantly negative review published 2 weeks after the movie debuted, Andrew Saris of The Observer began by writing, quote, Spike Jonze's Being John Malkovich from a screenplay by Charlie Kaufman may or may not be voted the best picture of the year by the New York Film Critics Circle, though I am reluctantly and resignedly betting that it will be. It is, at the very least, for both its director and its screenwriter, a remarkably zany and original first film that has already become part of our premillennial folklore. That is to say, though, I am not entirely enthusiastic about the film, even though I have to come to grips with what it seems to be saying about our mass infomercial-drenched culture and our increasingly frantic search for our psycho-sociosexual identities and options. That is the worst review of Being John Malkovich, which says quite a bit. Anyways, much to Ebert's dismay, it was not nominated for the Academy Award for Best Picture. It did receive 3 nominations, but no wins, for Jonze as Best Director, Kaufman for Best Original Screenplay, and Keener for Best Supporting Actress. It did, however, win a few awards, and some of them are hilariously specific. Malkovich himself won the American Comedy Award for Funniest Supporting Actor in a Motion Picture. Jonze and producers Michael Stipe, Sandy Stern, Steve Golan, and Vincent Landay won the Independent Spirit Award for Best Feature Film over $500,000. Jonze won the MTV Movie Award for Best New Filmmaker, which is not entirely surprising given his MTV pedigree, and the film won 2 Saturn Awards, one for Best Fantasy Film and one for Kaufman for Best Writing. Additionally, and perhaps tellingly, the film earned GLAAD's Outstanding Film Award, beating out Election, Flawless, Happy Texas, and somehow, and I'm going to have to look into this later, Big Daddy.
Surprisingly, Boys Don't Cry, not on the list.
Boys Don't Cry was not nominated for that award, which would make Logan happy, I am sure. Anyway, that's Being John Malkovich. And with that in mind, this is our first time that we have a returning guest to the show whose favorite 1999 movie is Being John Malkovich. And Joey?
I am going to read his Twitter bio because I have it open to make sure I get the podcast right. Because even when we had him on the first time, I was getting his podcast name wrong because I'm not good at things. Actor, writer, gutter wizard, co-host of Return of the Pod, made Simon Callow laugh once, stole 2 folding chairs from a college.
Wow. Amazing.
Former guest of this show and Too Fast, Too Forever and other shows, we have Brian Silliman.
Is all that true, Brian?
Hello, gentlemen. Yes, all of that's true.
You're also all of that's true. First return guest and first guest in the opening, in the intro segment.
Well, the honor is mine. I can't get over some of those reviews you were just reading. It makes me so happy that I'd never heard them before. And the first thing I want to say, the first thing that goes through my head is something that always goes through my head at least once a day. It's a quote from Adaptation, which is, "Are you out of your fucking mind?" What? Like the bad one that you said? It's like the bad. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like, what are these words that you've put together and calling it something? Just fuck off. Oh my God. It's like, oh man.
Well, Brian has feelings about this movie, and we're going to find out more about what they are in a moment.
Should we even take a break, or should we just do it?
We're going to take a quick break. Let's take a quick break.
Okay.
We'll be right back with more Brian and more Malkovich after the break.
We got to let him cool down a little bit.
You lucky people.
Okay, well, that was a good break. Welcome back from the break. Welcome back, Brian. Brian, your first, second time around. Whatever that. I don't know whatever I'm saying. Brian, you were talking about how you're mad at reviews. Why don't you talk more about how people who didn't like being John Malkovich are wrong idiots?
No, it's not so much that I had not heard those before, and if ever there was a movie that I just want to wash over me and not overanalyze, I feel this way with Charlie Kaufman's work in general.
Yeah,
and this one is special to me in that this was my introduction to Charlie Kaufman. It's my introduction to Spike Jonze. I saw this in theaters in '99. I didn't know movies could be like this.
right.
I didn't watch movies like this. I didn't, all of the other 99 movies, such as that you've listed, like Fight Club and movies like that, I would not have gone to if my horizons hadn't been opened by this. And John, you were there. I remember it was a week before I saw this, and I didn't realize how tied into my 99 experience you were during 99 itself, almost to a creepy extent. In does he have a time machine, and did he go back to 99, and is he stalking me retroactively through time? And if so, what a weird use of a time machine. Anyway, I had gone to see American Beauty, and which flipped out at the time.
Yeah,
has not
Nope.
aged well in
No.
a couple of ways.
Yep.
But the trailer for this movie played before that one, and I just, even the trailer, I'm like, what the hell is that? What the hell is that movie? That's something I'm going to want to see. And I remember I came back and we were talking about the movie, and you were there, and I said, and there was this you know what really looks interesting? This trailer for this movie coming out. It's like who's the actor? It's because I was less fluent in my John Malkovich filmography at the time. And you're like, oh, instantly you said being John Malkovich. I'm like, yes. And you're like, yep, I'm excited too. And nobody else knew what the hell we were talking about.
Yeah.
So I go to
sounds
see this,
right.
Yeah, I go to see this thing, not expecting anything, and my jaw was just hitting the floor. And I didn't know that movies could do this. I didn't know they were allowed to be this. Now I look at a movie like this, and I think Joey touched on this in today's studio system. I'm amazed anything like this would ever make it through. It's surprised that something like Everything Everywhere All at Once, that even got made, is something of a minor miracle, to say.
And it's a hit, a huge hit.
Yeah, and it's a gargantuan hit. And so, but with this one, it was less of that at the time, and he wasn't Charlie Kaufman Oscar winner yet. And he
was Charlie Kaufman. Nobody. He was Charlie Kaufman. Wrote 2 episodes of the Chris Elliott sitcom Get a Life. Like that's who he was.
That's more than I've ever done. But still,
fair.
Hey! You drove an Avenger around New York City, and don't you forget it.
Let's not forget. And for the record, Joey brought it up first. Yeah. And he Spike Jonze had not won his Oscar yet either. And so, in terms of looking at their, and I was instantly a Charlie. It made me an instant Charlie Kaufman fan. It made me an instant Spike Jonze fan. When I think soon after that they released a DVD of all of Spike Jonze music videos.
Yeah, I have that. I love that. Those so cool.
I still have it. That and the Michel Gondry one, still have that. I then went and sought out everything. I was like, I want to see everything this person has done, and there wasn't much. I remember before adaptation, I think Human Nature was kind of in the middle there, and is not one of his more well-known. I still haven't
seen that because I've never heard anybody talk about it outside of like, oh, there's another movie he did. Like I've heard nobody say like you have to see it or anything like that.
Yeah, it's a little more Hollywoody. It's still nuts. It still has, and it also features right in the middle of her Two Towers Return of the King fame, Miranda Otto in the middle of all this, and just has a hilarious line in there. It's definitely weird, but also that we saw. I remember seeing Confessions of a Dangerous Mind just because he wrote the script.
Right.
But then when I saw adaptation, I wasn't, had started with Malkovich and then going on following his career to see everything else in order. So Malkovich primed the pump. And so it's not like, oh, it doesn't live up to the others. It was my first step. And then
Mm-hmm.
when I saw adaptation, I was like, I immediately went out and bought the script, the screenplay, because I'm like, I need to know how you do this. I need to know how this is actually possible because I didn't think it was true. And then that was around the time, John, I'm sure you remember, the Eternal Sunshine script was the full script was milling around. You could download it, and very different from in the bones of what the movie ended up being were there, but there was a whole futuristic beginning and ending that is not in the movie we ended up with. And so I've followed his career ever since with each successive movie. And then when with Spike Jonze as well, I thought I was so happy when he got recognition for Her, which
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
thought was I just
Mm-hmm.
loved. I thought that movie was fantastic. And now that Kaufman's directing himself, talk about if anyone thinks this one's hard to wrap your head around, well, get a load of Synecdoche, New York. And even after that, it's like give a I'm thinking of ending things a shot, and you
Yeah.
and then this will look like you, will look like Follow That Bird in comparison.
Well, I will
But
say that in terms of Synecdoche, New York, as I don't know if either of you watched Nathan Fielder's The Rehearsal on
yes,
HBO, but as The
yes,
Rehearsal went on, I'm like, this is just Synecdoche, but like somehow crazier.
yeah, to the
Um,
point where I rewatched Synecdoche because of that show, because I was trying to figure out what exactly the rehearsal was. Again, I was like, what is he doing? This is something new. This is theatrical merged with something else. And I needed to, for my own mental health and fun, because I generally loved Nathan Fielder's work. I rewatched Synecdoche, and it certainly has a lot in common with that.
Mm-hmm.
and
And
then in terms of I'm thinking of ending things, that was my favorite movie the year that came out. I love that
yeah,
book. Somehow, in the rare feat, he took a book and made a better movie out of it. And then
that one took me a second view, because the first time I was like,
had you read the book or no?
no, I hadn't.
John,
I
have you
didn't
seen that
even.
movie or no?
No.
Okay.
It's on Netflix, and
Hmm.
it's one of those big Netflix titles that I'm hoping Criterion comes along and is like, we're gonna do a physical release, just like
Yeah.
Buster Scruggs and a couple of other Side of the Wind. I'm like, they're sitting there. If you can do Marriage Story, you can, get on thinking of ending things, because they already have Malkovich and a lovely Criterion set. I don't work for Criterion. I don't know why I'm talking their goods. But anyway, it's all, and this has become an obsession. He's one of those guys, right? Charlie Kaufman writes it. Now he writes it, directs it. I'm watching it. I'm watching it day one. I
Yeah.
will go
Yeah.
midnight the night before. I don't care what it is. I don't care who's in it. I read his book.
Oh,
He's
that was the thing I was going to bring up next. Antkind.
Yeah,
If you think
Ant
that
Kind.
his screenplays are difficult to follow,
Oh boy. It
Antkind is incredible, but it's like a 700-page
Yeah.
story in a story in a story weaving
It's
down. It's amazing.
You will think Infinite Jest is like Us Magazine after this. And let me just say, it was not my best choice of reads during quarantine,
No.
because it drove me insane. But there's in a good, and it was very rewarding at the end. But it's not, that's kickback and with a good book kind of book. It was more like
Yeah.
a quest, and I'm like, I'm finishing this out of spite. Like, I'm just gonna bleed my way through it. But it's nuts, and it's undiluted. There's no director, there's no editor. I'm convinced nobody edited this book except for maybe checked his spelling. It is completely undiluted Charlie Kaufman. And it reminds me a lot of, going back to the movie we're actually supposed to be talking about, when I read the original script of Being John Malkovich, at least one of the earlier drafts. And there is a lot that didn't end up in the actual movie, for that guy who said, "Oh, it's over long," which
Mm-hmm.
again, what was hour 50 some, it's like
Yep.
that's too long.
153. Yeah.
It's like I wonder what he thought of like 6 7 hours of the Batman, or
Yeah.
however long that was.
It is
Which
7 hours
which
long.
I'm
Yeah.
like, that's how long I want it to be great. It's like,
Yeah.
why do we want less Batman? I was having a good time. So anyway, so I have you either of you read the original script of Being John Malkovich
No.
or the draft? It's
I have, but I mean, that was a long ass time
It's
ago. So.
yeah, it's like one of those things that I downloaded like off LimeWire
Yeah.
or whatever the
Yes.
thing
That
was at
sounds
the
right.
time.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
got like on my Dell, and it's like, dude, you're getting some viruses,
Yeah. It
and
destroyed your Dell, but it was worth
yeah,
it.
it,
Yeah.
it was, and just the whole Flemmer is more of a character.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eric Mantini is a huge character and his nemesis, and it ends. I'll never forget this. And I was actually somebody told me about this, and then I was actually reading it. It was like I thought they were kidding. It ends with Schwartz and Mantini having this because he's the one who makes the big Belle of Amherst puppet, and I didn't recognize how absurdly both sad and brilliant that is in and of itself, and that's still in the movie. But man, they build puppets of that size bigger, and they have a puppet war. I think he's in the Malkovich guys at this point, but the war is using the play Equus, and that's how they have their fight. And the whole time Flemmer, who's kind of the devil, is manipulating Schwartz, who's manipulating Malkovich, who's manipulating the puppet of Martin Dysart or something like that. It is ridiculous. And part of me was like, this would have been fascinating, but I was kind of glad we got the movie we got.
Yeah.
Because like I
Yeah.
said, it was unlike anything else. And it just opened my mind. It didn't change me as an artist. It
Yeah.
just changed me as a person. I think it made me more well informed. It changed my compass in terms of what movies could do and what I was in. I thought I was only interested in this, and it's like, no, have like adventure, have some adventures, like go out of your comfort zone, and you'll be rewarded. So you name it, I got into all kinds of weird stuff after that. But for whatever reason, I will always be grateful to this one in particular. It's not my favorite Charlie Kaufman, but it stands out as that moment in '99. I'll never forget it.
I was on Twitter this week as Jean-Luc Godard died, and someone said that a scene from Band Apart changed the way they thought about movies. And that
Yeah,
phrasing was in my head as I watched this, because I'm thinking like, I know that like indie cinema had, sort of been to some extent revolutionized earlier in the decade with like Pulp Fiction and all that stuff. So like this is not like the beginning of this. But
right.
as we've gone through this show, and this like our 12th movie or something, John, like most of them, I mean, they've all mostly all been like really good movies, some exceptions, of course. But like other than maybe Magnolia, I think a lot of them have been kind of like straightforward, like things that you have been seen before. But I think
Yeah,
like this and that are like, I didn't know you could do that. And I feel like now, just based on how like the media literacy of everyone has evolved so much based on just how much people have seen and media everywhere, and just like the access to things and people making weirder stuff and on average probably better stuff, whatever. I feel like now it's a different thing, but back then I can't imagine going to see this and being like, wait, hold on, what is this? Like who
Yeah.
said this was okay? Who said this was allowed? Like who let me do this? Who let someone do this?
I think part of the genius of this, right? And in the intro when I said that it's like the 1999 movie that we've done, there's an element of like all of the stars aligning to make this movie actually
yeah.
possible, right? And not just in like being actually able to cast John Malkovich in this
I,
movie
I,
that
and
requires
just
him.
just to chime in on that, I don't think this movie would work with anyone else.
I agree. I think it has to be specifically this one character actor who is like
It's
the right amount of famous
totally
for this to work.
who is always Choices the musical, who is
Right.
go with Cyrus the Virus no matter what you're watching of his. It's like
Who
the grip.
seems like he's been in a jewel heist movie, but he hasn't, right?
Yeah,
That like
it's like I've never played a jewel thief. No, no, I'm pretty sure that was you.
pretty sure it was you. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. The thing is, like with Spike Jones, is that with his music videos as well, right? It's this ability to like distill something that's kind of crazy and out there into something that is like somehow commercial and somehow sells to people, right? That he's
yeah,
able to do that. And you're right, Brian, that like, this is not as weird as Kaufman actually is. And I think adaptation turned that up a little notch, right? But there's something about the
yeah,
marriage of these two that allows it for it to be just the right amount of fucking batshit crazy that people actually went to see this movie, and that gave them the clout to make something like adaptation, which again sort of ups the Kaufman element of it just a tiny little bit to make it this like Academy Award nominated, celebrated film that's this like wild adaptation of this novel that's not an adaptation of a novel at all. And like Nicolas Cage plays two characters who one of whom is, like one of them is Charlie
Yeah.
Kaufman, the other one's made up. And it's fucking insane, right? But like,
And that's a movie I point to whenever somebody says Nicolas Cage isn't like actually a good actor. I'm like,
right.
that's moment one. I was like, you're wrong because of this. It's like second, Raising Arizona. Third, I'd even put Unbearable Weight of Talent, or I forget the title of that movie. He was phenomenal on that. It's like you can list them like at least 10 movies. It's like he can give you whatever you want. So he's remarkable in adaptation.
I have
As
thoughts. I
is
think
the whole
Brian is
world.
right.
Oh, you do, Joey?
you-
That's
do.
fascinating.
You know, John, it's interesting. I think that you're right in that for the initial Kaufman-esque things, the first two, the first one, Spike Jonze. The second one was Michel Gondry with Human Nature, and and adaptation was Spike Jonze again. I thought they brought an order to his chaos in a way, and that's saying something because both of those guys are chaotic themselves, but they were able to harness his chaos and manage it with their own. And you watch something like Science of Sleep, and you're like, okay, that's unbridled Michel Gondry. Like he's he's chaotic himself, but they were able to make them a little bit not I don't want to say like regular movies like you would expect because they're still weird as hell, but it's a little bit more than you'd expect. And then when not necessarily, but still, it's like this is a movie. Then when Kaufman starts directing himself, you get Synecdoche, you get Thinking of Ending Things, and those are even more baffling because he's just free reign to just let his chaos explode.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm in the mood for that. Sometimes I'm in the mood for for usually I'm always in the mood for adaptation. Sometimes you want some Eternal Sunshine, and it's I think I love seeing him grow as a director as well. And but again, I feel like I keep thinking what it would be like if he went and especially Spike Jonze, if he worked with him again, what it would look like, what it would be. Because
Well, I think it's gonna happen. Like I can't
I
imagine it
hope
not happening.
so. Yeah, I hope as much as I love their work aside from each other, I hope they do. And it's interesting. You also mentioned a movie like Magnolia that I remember came out pretty soon after this, I think.
Yeah, it's December.
I would not have seen that movie in the theater were it not for being John Malkovich. That would have been a must skip. I would be like, okay, I don't know what that is now. But because Malkovich opened my horizons, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go see that. That looks big and weird. I don't know what that is. I'm going for everything now. I had not seen, you mentioned Pulp Fiction. I had not seen Pulp Fiction. Everyone was talking about it. I'm like, wow, that's not for me. When I finally watched that like a year after, I was like, wow, where's this movie been? You seen this thing? People are like, yes, everyone's seen it. I'm like, yeah, it's amazing. It's
nice.
Like,
the soundtrack. Have you heard the soundtrack? It's so good.
It's like, no shit. Where have you been?
Yes.
I think by the point I finally saw it, Jackie Brown was already out. And I'm like, I was like, well, let's watch this one. I was like, wow, this one kind of is even better. And they're like, again, no shit. But Malkovich was the gateway to all of that, and it changed my tastes. It didn't change my taste, but it opened my doors. It just said, come be a part of this larger thing.
It opened a portal into the mind
where it's like it doesn't always
Ryan
have to be
Silliman.
going to see Phantom Menace again, even though yes we will do that. But it can also be this. And I remember walking out of thinking this way when I walked out of Everything Everywhere All at Once, thinking that the last movie that made me feel like this was being John Malkovich. That I was like, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know you were allowed to do that. And I was that blown away by a movie that commits to the bit so hard. Malkovich, all of Kaufman's work does this, but Malkovich starts it off great. You think the joke is over. It's like forget the rule of threes. I've always gone in for the rule of 765s. You got to go through a while to get there where it's really unfunny, but eventually you get him back. Anyway, it's like the fifth or sixth repetition of the joke, and it's over. Like the joke is done. You're realizing, okay, there's no way that's all it's going to be. And then both this and that movie do a thing where, okay, not only are they continuing this joke, everybody else would have stopped by now. logical sense would make you stop doing this by now, but they keep
Well,
doing it and then turn it into something touching. They turn it by the point where this movie could have stopped it multiple times.
right.
And
Yeah.
then they bring it into something where he hits the big time as Malkovich or whatever,
Yeah.
and then it follows through, and and they just commit so hard. It's much like in Everything Everywhere with, I don't want to spoil it, but the raccoon stuff, where you think, okay, now this is just a gag. It's like,
Right.
no, they're gonna ride it so hard that it becomes even funnier and also touching and heartbreaking. That's what Malkovich does. It was like that's what it did, and it was a really bad influence on me. I'll tell you that.
I think when you think of like the Mike Clark review that we talked about with being an overlong, I think like what he meant is overstuffed, and I can sympathize at least with that
Yeah,
idea, right?
I
That,
mean,
like
but
there's a
then
fuckload going on here.
then go find less.
Right, sure, that's
Like,
fine.
yeah.
That's fine. It's funny because Brian, because like again, this is all sort of like context. Like this is the year that I knew you, right? And so I always assumed you were like a being John Malkovich kind of guy. But it's really interesting to know that this is sort of like when you turned into that sort of like film snob of
This,
of,
yeah,
like
this I
of
was
like,
when you met me, I was definitely a theater snob, but I
yeah,
didn't know you could be that way about movies.
right.
and so you met me
At a very
as
strange time in his life, to quote
Oh,
you.
yeah.
exactly, when I was just becoming a being John Malkovich, but a movie snob thanks to this movie. And then yes, there was also our illicit secret love affair, but we don't need to get into that.
I know that your story, by the way, is definitely true, and I'm glad you said that because it validates what I remember. So here's why I knew about this movie. I knew about this movie because I am a fucking obsessed REM fan, right? And I knew because I read Premiere magazine because I was a giant nerd. I knew that Stipe had started a production company, and I knew that the first movie that they bought, like in a film festival, was Malkovich. And so I read a piece about it in Premiere months before it came out, and I was like, I love John Malkovich, I love Michael Stipe. This sounds fucking awesome. I love Spike Jonze's music videos. I'm very excited about this. And nobody cared. Nobody talked to me about it. I'd be like, guys, there's this movie coming out, and John Malkovich is in it, and he plays himself, and Michael Stipe produced it. And they're like, we don't give a shit. Whatever. That's whatever.
And
Phantom
Jake
Menace,
and Steve and Dennis said, "Oh, shut up,
like,
John."
Yeah, Phantom Menace. Like whatever. Shut up, John. And I'm like, okay, but it's gonna be good. I promise. And then you were the one who listened, apparently. So God bless you for that. Joey, I gotta turn to you for a second because first of all, fuck Brian for remembering who Michel Gondry is without even having to think about it.
I know.
Like,
I even looked his name up this afternoon and I forgot.
God, we're bad. Anyways,
we ran. Me and remember Chris? You both know Chris Malika.
Sure.
We ran into Michel Gondry on the street once. He was walking out of a bodega. Yeah, and this was right after Eternal Sunshine. And both Chris and I, you can imagine Chris Malika's a big romantic softie. He is. He loves that movie.
I went to go see Ani DeFranco with him, so yeah, I get the
wow.
I get the vibe.
I am so unsurprised. I can picture it. But so we and I'm like, that's Michel Gondry because we're big into DVD extras. We know when we see them. It's like I can identify Grant Major from the DVD extras. Like, you did the beard prosthetics for Two Towers. Oh my God! It's like
I would know that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I'm like, he's like walking out of a deli. I'm like, yeah. And we walk up and I was like, excuse me, or we don't want to bother you. Are you Michel Gondry? He was like, yes, I am. And he's like very French. And we're like, we love Eternal Sunshine. He was like, oh, did you see the other one, my other movie? Because he's talking about Science of Sleep. Yeah. And we had not seen it yet. But we totally did that thing where we're like, yeah, that was great too.
Oh
and
my
like,
God, with the guy from
E2
like,
Mama you could tell that one was more of like, that was all him. But we totally lied. We had not seen it. But we really wanted to impress him. We had a very short conversation and just let him be on his way. But we're like, and they turned to us like, we just lied to Michel Gondry. We have to go and see Science of Sleep immediately. Yeah, but that is a wacky movie in itself. Sorry, I just wanted to slip in my one story about Michel Gondry.
I do want to say before, that's not really about this. I want to just get it out quickly. But two other things that I want to recommend based on things that Brian has brought up. But Michelle Gondry made a 2-season-long show on Showtime called Kidding, which again is about puppets, which also has Catherine Keener in it and is great. Also with Jim Carrey, so it's tying everything together there.
And this movie was like Catherine Keener introduction. She's another
And
one.
It really was.
Don't care what she's in. You just sold a ticket.
We'll talk
Catherine
about her
Keener
later.
was an indie darling. She was beloved by indie critics, but she was nobody to most of America. And
I'd never seen her in anything.
Very hesitant about this movie.
I remember hating her character, especially when the overweight guy's like, "I'm a fat man. I'm sad and I'm fat." She just goes $200. Yeah, I'm like, wow, you're awful. And then she has the arc that she has.
She hated the character. She was very worried about how it would come across, and then she got an Oscar nomination. So there you go.
And because that's the first thing I saw her, and I just thought that was her, and it's not at all. The real her is an 8mm.
The other thing that I wanted to bring up that we have we're closing on an hour of this show and we've not mentioned maybe Charlie Kaufman's best movie, probably not, but maybe in Anomalisa, also about puppets.
Oh yeah.
So it's all coming together.
I hate that I do this, but there's no other way to say it. Sometimes I forget that was him.
I saw that he wrote and directed that and produced it. I saw that at Fantastic Fest with a Q&A with him in person. And it was amazing, but I also felt so bad because you could tell that he did not want to be there. Like, I feel like he's the kind of guy who like doesn't really want to talk about what he makes. And he just wants to like let the art speak for itself. And people were asking questions. He's just like, and so I think like, his co-director Duke Johnson like answered a lot of the questions there, but like people wanted, because it was this access to Charlie Kaufman, like this like god of filmmaking in a way. Like, I would imagine most people don't know who he is, but the people who know about him are like, oh my God, this guy is the guy. And it's just clear that he's just like, I don't want this. Just
and he's not like cute about it, like you say to David Lynch. It's like, could you explain that further? He goes, no, no, I will not. Kaufman's just like, well, I imagine he's, it's like the kind of guys. I as far as I know, no social media presence.
I don't think so. I think he's just like, he does the thing and he wants the thing and then just moves on to the next thing.
I can't even imagine him on social media. That is beyond
I can't, but then I'm like, if he ever snaps and does go on social media, talk about an account, Twitter. I would finally turn notifications on.
Joey, I got to ask you, because we know what your relationship to the movies of this year is. So what was your entry point to being John Malkovich?
I don't know what inspired this, but I'm looking at my list. I think I saw it my sophomore year of college. So this would have been fall, like 07-ish. But that week, for the first time, I watched Three Kings, which I did not like. So I'm looking forward to rewatching that. And then right before this, I saw Adaptation and then this. So I guess I probably went from Adaptation to this, I would imagine. Like, oh, this guy did that.
Spike Jonze weekend.
I guess so, yeah. And that was the end of my fall semester. So I don't know what I would have been, or maybe my junior year, and somewhere in college. But again, it's one of those just like watch all the good movies. The list of movies that I saw that year is crazy. It's just, but yeah. So
that's kind of tough that this following Adaptation up with this and not the other way around.
I mean,
I think that's possibly colored your view of this movie.
I don't know. Like, I've wanted to go back. I'm pretty sure I've seen all of Charlie Kaufman's stuff just once, I think. I've wanted to go back and watch it all again, but it feels like daunting in a way. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, it can't possibly be as good or as special as I remember. And then it is, or it's what, you know what I mean? It's one of those where it's like, oh, this is great. Like, I remembered so little about this, like the whole, basically the structure of it, like the framing of it, like the office building and all. Like, I didn't remember that. I remember the going inside his head, obviously, and the Malkovich scene and that kind of stuff. But like, I don't know. Like, I think I should just trust in the fact that this guy knows what he's doing, and that I will enjoy his work again when I go back and watch it again.
Yeah, I'd say all of his movies not require a second viewing, but grow. So rewarding on a second view, a third, a fourth, a fifth. I'll say Synecdoche absolutely plays differently the second, the third time. The movie that required me a second time to fully appreciate it was I'm Thinking of Ending Things. I was like, the first time I watched it, I'm like, I was on my couch, it's quarantine, I'm in a bad mood. And I'm watching this. I was like, I don't know what this was. And then I watched it again with like, had some water, took a few days and watched it again. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is amazing, and I think that's just more about me than it was him. And then others like Eternal Sunshine, it's just kind of instant, but still will reward. There are little things here and there that you notice, especially you're not thinking. Well, this is you guys have doubtlessly talked about this before. You're not wondering, okay, where is he going? Where is this going to end up? You already know. And
right,
especially with something like
right.
adaptation, with how this movie ends up, the seeds, you can see how they're planting the seeds from the very beginning. So instead of with this movie, it's like, why is this movie starting with puppets? It becomes, oh, of course it's starting with puppets. That's what
That's
the
about
whole thing is
puppets.
about. It's like
Right,
he's
right,
puppeting
right,
somebody else or whatever.
right.
But the first time I was like, what? Why is it what? Okay. I like puppets. I didn't think this was and now it's like, well, that's in the essential DNA of the theme and everything about this movie. You get that the second time. It's like I didn't know this movie was about pod racing until I saw it the second time. And it was like,
Now
now I
that's
know.
pod racing.
Now this is in fact the sport that we are called pod
And
racing.
that's
Right,
how you knew
right.
that movie was Wizard.
This is puppeteer.
Yes,
I
it's
have to. I
like
have to say, like, one of the things that I think is most. So I've seen this movie like probably 4 or 5 times, right? And I
Have you seen it
still,
more than any other Charlie Kaufman or Spike Jonze movie?
yes, yeah,
Okay.
for sure, yeah, yeah. And I still like don't get it, but also one of the things that I came to realize that I actually like about Charlie Kaufman a number of years ago is that not getting it is kind of part of the point, because what Charlie Kaufman does, like, unlike other kind of aggressively weird filmmakers, right? Charlie Kaufman is able to marry and sort of bridge this very delicate place where he's like, I'm going to make a movie about like the Cartesian question of the nature of existence, right? Or yeah, the Cartesian question of being and mind, and also a little bit of just like fuck you, it's about puppets and shit, like, and it's so well blended, those two things together, that it's like a lot of it is deeply philosophical and a lot of it's like, well, this is fucking weird, let's just do this, and it's so like, to be able to pull that off the way that he does movie after movie, where there's an equal measure of like pretentious philosophizing with like, this will be fucking interesting and dumb and
yeah.
weird, and I'm just gonna do it because I can. And I think that is a really cool aesthetic. Like, I think about someone like um uh what's his face, Royal Tenenbaums,
Oh,
Wes
Wes
dude,
Anderson.
Anderson.
Wes Anderson. And it's like, I like your shtick a little bit for a while, and then I get kind of tired of it. But with Kaufman, like, I want to be tired of his thing, but I'm not, because he keeps just having that kind of like, fuck it
Well,
attitude that I really appreciate.
I wonder if part of that is that. So I've been watching all of Wes. I've been rewatching all of Wes Anderson's movies this year because I have a friend who really loves them and like has like different times of the year that he likes to watch them. And so I'm like, I'll watch them with you. So I've been watching rewatching most of them, and I feel like I'm very much in the minority there in that I like his newer stuff, not his new stuff, but like my favorites of his are Moonrise Kingdom and Grand Budapest. And like his early stuff that people are like, this is the best. I'm just like, it doesn't really work for me. Like I like it, but I don't love it. But I feel like part of that is because so many people have tried to ape the Wes Anderson twee sort of
Mm-hmm.
pastel colors. And I
Mhm.
think
Yeah.
maybe the reason that it like the Charlie Kaufman thing holds up is because like you can't really ape his thing.
No,
Like
that's a
like
really great
and
point.
you
Yeah,
also
you
like
Yeah.
can't.
you can't just be like,
Or
oh,
like
that
the
movie's
Coens, you
weird.
can't make a fake, like, there's so many fake Coen brother movies, right? That like,
Yeah.
that's part of that, almost deteriorates part of the Coens for me.
Yes.
And same with Tarantino.
Mhm.
I feel like
Yeah,
who
for
is
sure.
itself borrowing from other references. You can tell when somebody's not borrowing from those references, but trying to ape Tarantino. You could
Right.
tell the Coens is a fine example. Wes Anderson, I'll admit I am full on complete basic white asshole, and that I love everything that man makes. Every single thing.
God bless
Budapest
you.
is my favorite of his movies. I have watched The French Dispatch probably 10 times.
Really?
Yeah, I own multiple copies of every single one. That is my own. That is my version of pumpkin spice lattes. Like I am so basic in that, and I will admit to it. I love those. I love what he says. I just love living in that man's world, and I don't. I love the older stuff. I love the new stuff. Love it all. But John, I think you made such a good point when you said one thing that Kaufman does routinely, and I could definitely see. absolutely somebody's looking at his work and saying, "Oh, it's pretentious. I don't like it. It's talking down. It's condescending." I absolutely could see that reaction and being completely valid. It's like you do you. I'm not going to force this stuff on anybody. It works for me, and I think a key thing, especially with Malkovich, that kind of grabbed me from the beginning is exactly what you said. It has these high-minded ideas. It's big, it's weird, it's very themey. And in the same movie, you have Charlie Sheen playing himself talking about witches and just like eating from like a tinfoil thing and being Malkovich's best friend. Like, in what world is that a thing? And there's just nuts, the undercutting constantly, like things like the jewel thief bit and like the guy who randomly throws a can at his head on the turnpike and just yells, "Malkovich, think fast," which is my favorite line in the movie, because how would they identify him at a distance like that? It's like these people are riding around looking for Malkovich in particular to throw a can at his head just to make his day worse. And it's things like that undercutting that doesn't take away from the ideas and everything on display, but it just, you're just, making fun of yourself every 10 minutes or something like that. And I love that about it. It's not winking. It's not, it's not ribbing. It's like, "Ah, not good." It's just part of it. It's just part of the whole experience. And I think he does that in different ways in all of his movies. But he does it a lot in Malkovich. The entire Malkovich character is really just undermining himself and just making fun of himself.
Which is why he almost didn't do the movie, or like what he was afraid of doing the movie over.
Yeah.
He deserves an Oscar nomination just for this scene where there's a lot of him. Like,
absolutely thought he should have not only been nominated for this movie, but should have won. I don't remember who did win in that year, and I'm sure it was somebody I like a lot.
There's a guy named Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, when in doubt, I don't think he would have.
Supporting?
Oh, for supporting, no.
It was probably also something from American Beauty, because that movie won every single award.
Was it Chris Cooper? It might have been Chris Cooper.
Well, Chris Cooper won supporting for adaptation.
That's right. Yeah,
okay. Rightfully so.
Oh, weird! What a weird circle that is.
Yeah, it's. I think. I don't remember, but it also should.
No, it's Michael Caine. Michael Caine for the Side of House Rules, a movie that I do not like at all.
I have buried too many Batmans. I have buried too many Batmans. I was also not nominated for supporting actor that year, who should have been, as Philip Seymour Hoffman for Mr. Ripley.
Never heard of him.
And
well, I would encourage you to check out Yes, I Love Hoffman.
Who also stars in a movie called Synecdoche, New York. Heard of it?
And a movie called Magnolia, which we've talked about before.
Yeah, and one of like my all-time favorite actors to ever live. That also, but yeah, I would have given it supporting to Malkovich purely because he's ultimately in a movie full of great actors, and Orson Bean is in this. I remember thinking, where do I know him from? It's the voice. I don't know the face, but the voice. And then I thought, holy shit, he's Bilbo Baggins from the Rankin Bass Hobbit. And it put together, it was like, you never forget that voice. And I was like, holy shit.
The greatest adventure.
You two nerds. It's unbelievable.
We are not nerds. I've never even seen these movies. I don't even know what he's talking about right now.
I don't understand the meaning of the word.
I am Googling stuff as he's talking to just fit into the conversation.
Yeah, Joe.
Yeah. So let's speaking of performances. All right. So the two that I would like to get you both your take on. This to me like was the movie where I was like, oh, I knew Cameron Diaz was good from The Mask, but then I was like, oh, she's really good.
Wait,
like,
should I see The Mask? I have not seen The Mask. Should I see The Mask?
The Mask is great. You should definitely see
the Jim Carrey The Mask. Are you talking about that one?
That's the one. Yeah.
Not the Eric Stoltz.
Of the Jim Carrey movies, that's my favorite Jim Carrey movie. My favorite Jim Carrey movie is obviously The Truman Show, but like it's of the Jim Carrey movies, I think it's the best.
It's very Jim Carrey.
Yeah, and it's very good. Like it's a really well-made movie, and it's very funny. And she is phenomenal in it.
I think she's fantastic in this, and I think she's generally underrated as an actor.
Well, she's retired, but like
she's coming back, baby. She's coming back for something.
Awesome. I love her. I think she's I remember seeing her. This is way off topic, but one of my favorite performances of her is in My Best Friend's Wedding. And because she plays this role of this character who you were like, oh my god, why would anybody actually want to marry her at all? And then by the end of the movie, you're like totally on her side and in her camp, and like puts herself next to Julia Roberts as this like it's just Julia Roberts at that time to like go as the love rival to Julia Roberts wasn't a fucking insane thing for anybody to do, because you're always going to be the loser in that situation.
Well, it's the
And
same thing here, right? She does the same exact thing
yes,
here, where she
yes,
is this very, very like never more mousy Cameron Diaz.
yes, and she's so good at it.
Yeah.
It's
And
crazy.
And never
clearly,
has a moment where she, oh my god, she's beautiful, like that. There's
No,
no she's all that moment.
no, like the closest thing they have is when she's in the bathrobe at the end, where the guy's just like, "You're so beautiful in your oversized men's bathrobe," where like
yeah,
she kind of
yeah.
like has her hair not as frizzy, but she's like a little bit off her rocker. She's got all these pets around, and then you have the contrasting to that, like a never more beautiful Catherine Keener in a way that I'm just like, holy moly! Like, and like you can see why Cusack, but like Cusack is also like dumpy and frumpy and not. So it's just like
Yeah, this is very uncute. This is the most not Cusack movie, really, I think, ever. Right? Like even
mhm.
the action movies, he's more Cusack than he
It's
is.
interesting when he and Malkovich are. I don't remember if I think it was before this. Their previous. They don't have many scenes together, but they're quite different in Con Air. Their
Yes.
characters in that movie are,
Well,
are
which is
quite.
a direct sequel to this movie, or prequel.
It is. It is the unofficial prequel. This movie is going to be called Two Con Two Air, and they're like, why don't we call it Being John
Being
Malkovich?
John Malkovich. Yeah, makes more
And
sense.
I'm like, yeah, it's how about Romeo and Juliet? Just a suggestion.
Romeo and Juliet 2,
Yeah,
Being John Malkovich. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Romeo and
exactly.
Juliet's high school reunion.
I like it.
I see it. I see how you got
Let's
there.
write
I
that
respect
screenplay.
it. I like it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's yeah. They're all like nobody's really looking all that good, except for Catherine Keener, of course, and then Malkovich himself. Even when he's like talking on the phone about bath mats, and that's the life
Right.
that these people want. They're like, well, he's my second choice, but he's perfect, And it's you think, and I don't know how you guys. When I saw it the first time, I was like, oh, he's just on the phone like talking about bath mats. I'm like, they're gonna want their money back. And the guy comes out of it and he's ecstatic. He wants to go again immediately. You're like, it doesn't matter how basic whatever Malkovich is doing, they just want to be somebody else for a little bit. And it's oh man, it's yeah, I've got us completely off topic, but yeah, I wonder how I can see how Catherine Keener ended up in the movie, but I'm still wondering is who I'd say even Cusack and Cameron Diaz aren't who. If I read this script without seeing it, they're not like don't
No,
pop into my
Well, this
mind.
is the
no, I would
year
not think John
after.
Cusack. Right? Yeah,
This is the
yeah.
year
Yeah,
after
I
Something
wouldn't
About
think of
Mary,
either
right?
one.
Like that was 98. So like I
Right.
can see her being like, I don't
So
want to be this for the rest of my life. Like
And
yes,
also, like, I have the clout to do whatever I want, and I think
right,
that's part of that as well.
and
Yeah.
kind of a so hot, right? She's so hot right now. Let's put her in this, and maybe that'll get some of the norms to see this thing.
Right.
Because they like that, that Mary movie, so maybe her name will
Oh,
get her in
I
there.
wouldn't underestimate that. I mean, having Cameron Diaz on the marquee on this movie, I think, was a huge part of why it got made.
Yeah,
Because she was such a bankable star at that point.
and
And
so is Cusack. I mean,
yeah, but
at the
Cusack,
time.
Was a very niche bankable star, right? Like, people like me who like loved High Fidelity and which I actually that was the year after, but like, I loved Say Anything and the whole Better Off Dead and the whole Cusack oeuvre, right? Like, I was a huge
Gross Point
Cusack
Blank
fan.
was before this,
Gross
right? That
Point Blank
wasn't.
was before it,
Yeah,
but Cusack was still a very niche star. Like, he was
yeah,
not someone who could sell movies to a wide audience. He could sell movies to John Cusack fans who were like a very kind of like specific audience. Whereas Diaz was someone who just like was a massive international superstar, even at this point.
yeah. Thanks to just those two movies that you mentioned, The Mask and Something About Mary.
More or less. Yeah. Yeah. Basically. Yeah.
So it's like almost like, well, how did they end up with Cusack and not go after? I wonder if they did go after somebody like Ben Stiller for that part, or
Right.
somebody more of a name but more well known for like playing dorkier characters. That it doesn't matter because it works so well. But and then I love how all of them then have cameos and adaptation on the set of this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think Cusack's a great actor. I always have. And this to me, like even though I don't think of this when I think of like the John Cusack career, like this is the one that kind
No,
of stands out to me as where I was like, oh, but like there's so much interesting stuff that you do as a performer, and this
he's
is that kind of
fantastic
showcase.
in this. It's
Yeah.
it's how do you know, I won't be seeing what you're seeing in court? I mean, that is a reading of a line where it's just, oh,
Yeah.
perfection.
Yeah.
And I too, if I think of John Cusack, I don't think of this movie because it's really not him. If I
It's
think
High
of Cameron
Fidelity for
Diaz, I
me.
don't think of this movie. When I
Right.
hear the words high fidelity, I think of the excellent Hulu streaming series instead. But we
Oh
haven't
yeah,
seen that.
there's a guy I know who's in that show.
Oh,
It's
oh, it's so
I
good, so good, man. He's so hot
think
right
it
now.
was
But
Joey. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, it's interesting but then when I do think of John Malkovich, this is probably this, and I don't want to keep harping on this movie, but this and Con Air are the ones I think of first. I know he's done so much more,
Oh, is that right?
but
That's interesting because like the one to me is In the Line of Fire. Like
yeah,
always, every time. His that role is one of the most fucking terrifying performances I've ever seen in my life. I saw that movie. It's the first time I think I hadn't seen Dangerous Liaisons at the time, not surprisingly, but like that's the first time I think I was ever introduced to him, and I was mesmerized and terrified by him forever. And I
yeah,
thought he was absolutely fascinating, and that's part of what excited me about this movie as well, because I was like, yeah, that guy freaks me out. Let's get inside of his brain, right? Like,
yeah,
see what's going on in there.
and I can see this hesitance to do it, but just it's such a self takedown
Oh yeah,
of the mythos and everything like that, to the point
yeah.
where I remember when I finally visited Chicago and went to Steppenwolf, they sell the copies of this movie there. Like they 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 sell the script of this movie there. Like it's become a part of his legend, and people just assume that he's sitting there rehearsing for Three Sisters, and it's like as they just assume, well, that's probably what he really does. The self mockery on display, and the lack of, what's the word I'm looking, the lack of vanity, I guess,
Yeah.
because it's not a flattering picture of him, is really something. And but that's not what worried him. It's, I don't want to be known for just this movie. It's like he
Yep.
doesn't care how much he at once strikes you as somebody who takes himself very seriously, yet not seriously
One
at
hundred
all,
percent.
which is
One hundred
exactly
percent.
what this movie does with the
Yeah.
undercutting and everything else. And that is Charlie Kaufman. It's so serious, yet it's, there's Charlie Sheen, um, just as his friend. Why not?
And I think that is who he is. Like I
Yeah.
think that's part of why it's so great is because we all kind of know that, right? That
Yeah,
he's
he
this
just
very
takes
like
these
serious
chances.
artist who's like
For
also
every
a brilliant
line
weirdo,
of fire, there's an Aragon, and
right?
which is probably the only performance of his that I really don't enjoy, and it's not his fault. He has like 2 lines that he says about 50 times in that movie. It's not his fault. It's not his fault.
Or his other 99 movie, The Messenger: The Story of Joan of Arc, a movie that we will be talking about later that is very bad, but
Yeah, that's a special one.
spectacularly bad though, and it's I can't wait to talk about it. It's funny because like so for both of you, we've talked a lot about Charlie Kaufman, we've talked a lot about Malkovich, we've talked a lot about Spike Jones, about the movie itself. We haven't really talked about like, and I think maybe this is telling in some way as to like why this movie is popular or sort of its cult staying power. Like we haven't talked about like the philosophical themes really, right? Like
Yeah.
what this is all sort of what it
Well,
adds up to,
what
what
I
it
was
really
surprised
means.
about
Like
in that regard this time around is that I did not remember. I mean, I only saw it the one time, and I didn't have the vocabulary for it then 15 years ago. But like how much and how true and genuine and honest of a trans story this feels like, and I
yes,
can't really speak to that in a way
another
that
thing I
like
want to talk to Logan about, right?
yeah.
That's what I was thinking about this time. And I was like, whoa, 99 was also a huge trans themed year, right? Because like, and this is why it won the GLAAD award. What I talked about in the intro
Yeah.
is that it has these trans themes like The Matrix does, and like Boys Don't Cry tries to and fails, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, it has these two like monumental movies about the trans experience that like nobody I think realized at the time, or at least the mass audience realized at the time, was about that, and that's fascinating.
Even though they say trans in this movie, and like I think you have
Right.
to be. Although I would also say, no offense to those other movies, but the average intelligence of somebody probably seeing this movie is probably higher than somebody seeing The Matrix. So I feel
Fair
like
enough.
they might just be
Fair
more well read and more, hip
Maybe.
to, hey, there's other people who don't necessarily have the same life experience that you have.
I really can't picture the kind of person that walks into the movie theater in '99 and says, "1 ticket for Boys Don't Cry, please." And I'll also have the extra large popcorn, those Twizzlers, and the biggest cherry Coke you have.
I'm gonna
I
have a
was one
real
of
good
them
night
minus
tonight.
the other stuff.
What did you do? I had a good old time. I went to the multiplex and I saw Boys Don't Cry. I had a great time.
I saw it in that movie theater in that alley in downtown Ithaca.
In Cinemapolis.
That's the one.
Yeah. No, it's I agree with you, Joey. I think said it. I'd be very curious to actually shut up and listen for a change at people that are far well versed in this topic to hear about how this movie has aged and plays today.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to think it plays well, but I also don't know what the hell I'm talking about. So that's something I would like to just sit and kind of learn about, because whereas there's nothing offensive, I don't see anything offensive, doesn't mean that there isn't anything offensive.
Mm-hmm.
It's I'm not of that world, so have no place to say what's offensive and what's not. Although even I can look at something like Boys Don't Cry, and even at the time I'm like, is this kind of,
Kind
is
of
this
fucked up.
like
Yep.
this is certainly, this is pissing somebody off, right? It's like, what?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but with this one, I just I'm curious about that. I thought about that today, which how it would be perceived today, and I think Kaufman has enough foresight and empathy to be able to have written it from a knowledgeable and empathic place. I'd hope.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong. Who knows? I've been wrong before.
Yeah, I also think like from the other kind of, I think there's a lot of, it kind of gets back to what I was saying about Kaufman in general, which is that he is like, yeah, how about this? How about this? How about this? And it's like, that's kind of endearing about it. It's like, here's this idea now. And you're like, okay. But I think the overall premise that it's almost a meditation on what it is to act and to write, and how fucking insane that is on some level, right?
Yeah.
That like you are, as an actor, literally like in someone else's mind and like controlling them, and the fact that Craig is a puppeteer, and that like it's like, well, when you're a puppeteer, like how much awareness, like how alive is the puppet, and where is that consciousness, and like, like where in the string does that happen, right? And the idea of like Malkovich as kind of a character, but also a character that the other characters are employing throughout the movie. I think of it and I'm like, yeah, this is sort of like what drama and movies and writing is, and fiction is all about. And I think Kaufman's like, and isn't that kind of fucking weird and funny? And you're like, yeah, it kind of is. And that's kind of what the whole movie really kind of boils
Isn't it
down.
weird that we do this?
Right.
Like, isn't it weird
Absolutely.
that this is a thing? And then it also, I love it when it ties to the theme of Maxine and her manipulating people and treating people as puppets. She
Yeah.
genuinely falls for Craig as Malkovich when it's like, oh, it's playing with people. It's not just playing with puppets. You're a master manipulator of
Yeah.
real people. That I can get behind. That I respect.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't see that. And you realize, oh, she's a puppeteer of all kinds of people the whole time, but just in a far different way.
And Craig sucks at it, kind of, right? Like that's also sort of the point, right? He's not.
It's like his dance of disillusionment or whatever. It's like and she's just, you're brilliant. It's like, is he?
Yeah.
And so when like they have Sean Penn, it's like, I think a lot of us are going to be getting into puppetry. That's more of that undercutting, but still, you're right. It's like, why this? And it makes, just if you think about it, makes to show up on a set and say lines and do this makes just as much sense as Sean Penn becoming a puppeteer at, like, what is it, like the VMAs or something, where they say Malkovich broke through.
Yeah.
It's that why not that? because it's just so weird that this is a thing in general. And really, all Kaufman is doing is pointing at it and saying, "Isn't this weird?" And then taking it 20 steps past where anyone normally would. Once again,
I think that's what's great about both Kaufman and Jones in their work is like I think fundamentally what they like doing is pointing out just how fucking crazy we all are and
yeah.
like in this
Why
very
have
like
Christopher
mundane
Walken?
sort of way,
Yeah,
right?
why have Walken just tap dance? Why don't we also have him fly? You
Right.
know, it's like we can just
Yes.
have him tap dancing the whole time. But what if? Now, hear me out, guys. What if for the whole final verse he just flies around? Well, I don't know. It's like, no, no, just do it. Let's just do it. It's like, why? Why not? It's like you
Yeah.
have him tap dancing on an elevator. It's like,
Yeah.
so why not also have him fly? Why not take this to the absurd the absurd conclusion? Again, playing it like 10 steps past where anyone else would. He does that in so many of his music videos. He does that here. And it with I thought, except in Her, where I thought he showed restraint. And I was glad he did, because he didn't go as far as I thought he was going to go, and for once I was glad he didn't in
Well, I
that
feel like with
movie.
her, like the world is crazy to a certain extent, and the characters are normal, right? Like it's kind of an inverse. Like this is ostensibly like a normal world with like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah,
But her is just like, hey, we're in a future where like very weird, specific things you can understand are happening, but they're not the things that you might think would happen in 5, 10, 20 years, whatever. But like our
yeah,
characters are as grounded in this reality as we can make them.
right, right. And it just it I was thankfully that I'll say that I'm thankful that movie ended when it did, because play it for another 15 minutes, it easily would be a tragedy.
Well, can we
I'm like,
talk about, speaking of endings? I don't know how much more you have on your list to cover, John, but I want to talk about the ending of this because I think this is one of the best endings to a movie that we've done for this podcast yet.
oh, it's so creepy, and it's what he deserves too.
But I think what's
It's
also like amazing about it is that once you find out, as they're explaining, like the vessel and has to be by midnight, otherwise you're gonna go in the next baby or whatever, like, and you know that Catherine Keener is pregnant. It's like there's only one way this movie could end, and it goes there, and still it works. Like it's not like, oh, I saw that coming. It's like I saw that coming, and like that's why it works.
Yeah, it's you can see it as the potential of that happening, and then when it happens, it's the worst. The worst way he could have ended up is how he's ended up, and at that point, you're glad he did. He has lost you. At least he has lost me. At that point, if I was ever rooting for him, he's lost me. And also, I'd be, I can't believe I haven't mentioned this. This was also the first movie. Speaking of that ending, I think of the theme of this movie. I'd never heard a score by Carter Burwell before, because I hadn't gotten into the Coen brothers movies yet, and it just blew me away. I was like, "Who wrote that music? Who wrote that theme?" And bought the CD immediately, and then have followed Carter Burwell's music ever since, and I love it. Most of the Coen brothers movies he does, I'm a sucker for any Carter Burwell score, and this was the first. And it doesn't matter who he's working for. It's not like they're all the same, but you know it when you hear it. It's like in the movies, like, that is so haunting and weird and also beautiful. I bet it's Carter Burwell. And then, yep, it is.
I will only say so. I have only one negative thing to say about this movie that I feel like I have to say, which is that
Ooh.
as someone who suffers from spatial anxiety and claustrophobia to some degree, I cannot those scenes where they can't stand up in that office
Oh yeah, my
space.
neck hurt while watching this movie.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate it so much, and I know it's part of like what makes the movie so great and so funny and so like absurd and over the top, but I genuinely start to cringe after a while.
That's before the real weirdness happens. It's this weird
Yeah.
office, and you got Orson Bean. It's like, don't toy with Flourish, Schwartz. It's like, which one's this one or this one? And
Yeah.
also Octavia Spencer with
I
two
know.
lines.
As woman
Yeah.
in elevator.
I was like, I'll take you up. It's two. I always, when I rewatch, I'm like, yep, that's her with two
She
lines.
was doing a lot of that sort of thing
Yeah.
back then, like
Yeah.
2 lines in a
I'm like,
movie, and
great.
yeah, more Octavia Spencer, the better. I do like, though, like, there's this kind of nod, like, the whole idea of 7.5, right, has this sort of, like, uh, theological bent to it, because of course the number 7 and 8 are both incredibly significant theological numbers, and like it's one of the things I love about Kaufman is that it's like it makes it seem a lot more significant than it really is, and then it just gets kind of weirder from there, right? Because if you're like a philosophy and religion person, you see 7.5 and you're like, oh, interesting, right? That's going to go someplace.
I didn't even know that was a thing. I thought it was just having
absolutely.
a laugh. I thought those just, it's like, well, yeah. I see.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing, if you get it, great. If you don't, you'll get something else.
And the joke is that it's not a joke. The joke is that it's just like, it's like he's like leading you on.
Yeah, if anything, you're the joke that you caught this stupid bit.
Exactly.
It's like, so who's laughing now?
I'm the nerd.
Yeah. It's like, no, you're the one with the problem.
Anyways, yeah, I think we've said all there is to say.
Not a lot of cars, not a lot of car chases, though, Joey, in this movie, are there?
Well, there's a lot. There's that. I mean, the thing that is, I think, to me, the funniest is just that the portal dumps you out on the side of the NJ Turnpike, which,
that's amazing.
As a lifelong, basically New Jersey resident, it kind of sucks, but it gets the job done, and so there are a lot of cars.
Neat
One
cars.
Is that a reference to like failed New York actors when they're spit out by the system or like end up in New Jersey? Is that the
I don't
idea?
know, but if it's not, it should be.
No, I think it's just funny that like you start in New York and you end up in New Jersey, like in the shitty part of New Jersey.
Spit out the New Jersey Turnpike quite literally on the side of the road with a bit of wood covered in mud. And part of you can't wait to go back and do it again, except in real life, no, you would just walk and never go back. Yeah, that's I had not thought of it like that, but now I'm only gonna think of it like
that. Yeah. So Joey, we can't ask Brian his favorite.
Ooh, we gotta have a so on Foodie Films, which is in hiatus right now, has been for a while, but he would ask guests one question the first time, then he'd ask a different question the second time.
We haven't thought about
plan about this. No,
we did not plan. We are poor planners.
Ask me anything.
Here's a good idea, maybe, and I don't know if you're gonna have an answer to this. I don't know if many people, but I feel like maybe if people would, Brian would. Do you have a favorite year of movies that has ever come out?
That's an interesting question.
Because I don't know that 1999 is my favorite. Because I think like it's obviously very good. There's a lot of movies in there that I love, but I feel like
do a podcast about that.
I mean,
as long as nobody else is doing it.
I've heard there are. Did you guys know there are already a couple podcasts about this? Why are you?
Wait, there
doing
is?
Yeah,
unbelievable.
So I don't know why you guys
that
are
is
doing
false.
This. It's not like last time I checked, there are about 3,000 Star Wars podcasts, but this is the only. So you guys should just abandon this whole thing right now because I have read online from reliable sources. No, it's like I saw that.
I will say
really.
I know that was very funny. I guess I want to just address that really quick. I just want to make it clear. Joey and I have never listened to any of the other 99 podcasts.
I haven't even read Brian Raftery's book because I don't want to have his thoughts in my
You guys
brain.
have ideas of your own, and it's just the pearl clutcher going. It's like, oh, well,
so stupid.
My dear, there's more than one podcast about 1999.
Someone's already covered true crime.
Well, that's why, like, when people like, I think the idea is so because, like, I've said to friends that, like, explaining like the podcast I'm doing, they're like, "You're doing an entire podcast about that year?" I'm like, "Yeah, but like there are other shows," and like somebody even wrote a book with it. It's like, what? I'm like, just look at the movies that came. Like, it's not that far. I feel like when you're thinking about like you're doing an entire podcast about movies from a single year, they're like, wait, what? But yeah, if you look at it, there's reason that other people have taken an in-depth look at these movies.
It's James Gunn has already made a Scooby-Doo movie. So that's it. Line like portcullis down. Enough.
I will say though, not to belabor this point, but whoever wrote that nasty review, not even nasty review, just like annoyed review, they weren't even.
Are you guys aware that there's actually?
It wasn't. That's what pissed me off, Joey. It wasn't actually a bad review. He had nothing to say about like the actual show.
Been done, right? But like whoever,
I don't know if you're aware of this, but there. And I was just like, oh my.
Whatever show he was, and I don't even remember the name of the show, and I'm not trying to be above it because I know whatever. But like, if you search 1999 in Apple Podcast, that one does not come up. Like other ones come up that are defunct, and ours comes up. But whatever one that is that has been going on for 5 years and is, it seems very well received. It has a lot of listeners, and there are two people in the industry and whatever. When you search 1999, that doesn't come up. So I don't know.
Yeah,
fuck you,
it's
dude.
yeah, and another good point from John. I mean, it's hard to argue with that lie. I hadn't thought of it like that.
Yeah.
But no, I in terms of favorite year though, you know, honestly, the first year that kind of popped in my mind, I wonder why, was '99. Not even because
Good one.
my favorite movies are in there, but the size, like how many
Mm-hmm.
there are, how many game changers there were. There's Matrix, there's Mummy, there's Phantom Menace, there's Malkovich, there's even ones that aren't in ever going to be favorite movies, but are just really good, like Mr. Ripley. There's Magnolia, Fight Club. These movies just all together at once changed the way I looked at it. So I don't know if it's the best, but it probably had the most effect on me, and the way I just look at movies, and made me want to seek out other movies like it. Like I've
Mhm.
driven that point home about a million times now. I also, you know, I will always have a soft spot for 2003,
Mm.
because of Return of the King.
Mm.
That's
Hell yeah.
that's it. That's just the only reason. Is I
That
don't
movie 100 times
yeah.
over is the entire year for
I
me.
don't care what else came out that year.
I don't
I know
remember what
that
else came out
I
that
know
year.
that one did.
I feel like
And the same,
Closer maybe in like
yeah,
the Garden State around the time. I
I
don't know.
liked Closer. I don't much care for Garden State. That's just me. But also, I mean, 84, because Amadeus was in 84. I don't know. I'm just thinking of favorite movies. It's wherever. What's my favorite movie? Yeah, that year. I'll
That
say
year. Yeah.
it's hard, but
Yeah.
for sheer volume of just quality, and it's like I feel like it was every week there was something new and exciting to go and see, and it was just a pretty fun, transformative year in general. I'll just
Yeah.
be true to my basic asshole self and just say 1999 is where it's
Fantastic.
at.
What is your favorite John Malkovich movie aside from this one?
Oh, yeah, it's got to be aside from this one because it's definitely this one.
Sure. 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 Sure.
I I think I've already talked about it. It's not his. I don't. It's not my favorite work of his. It's not like, oh, if I'm going to study a performance of his, that's going to be the one. But if you're just looking for him having fun and just being off the chain, cut loose with some weird deliveries and just having a ball, I mean, I never get sick of Con Air. That movie is kind of such trash, but it's like Under Siege. I could watch it 3 times in
Yeah.
a row and not
100%.
be sick of it. It's
100%.
not be
Yeah.
it's and he's I'm pretty sure he wasn't being directed. Just like just do what you want, and you can tell. And he's just another actor in that part, and I don't think that that movie would it doesn't work. It might not work the way it is, but it wouldn't be as fun. It wouldn't be as rewatchable. And there's a lot in that movie to rewatch. I mean, Cole Meany's in that movie. He's in Under Siege too. So he's Cole Meany is swearing up a storm. Chief O'Brien is dropping F bombs left and right in Con Air. Yet and you got Ving Rhames in there,
Yeah.
and so it's but Malkovich just um with some of his readings in that I it's it's not the best, but it's if I'm aside from being John Malkovich, if I'm going to throw one on right now, that's the first one that came to mind.
I think, John, I think I mentioned this movie on our Fight Club episode, but around this time when I'm watching all these movies and finding actors that I like and, you know, the cool actors or whatever, my favorite Malkovich, I think, other than this one, is I mean, Con Air, it might be Con Air, but also Rounders, where he plays
Yeah,
Teddy
Oh, yeah.
KGB. And it's, you know, Matt Damon and
Yeah.
Edward Norton who were in
I
like the
always
Triangle of
forget.
Great
Courage.
performance.
I always
Yeah.
forget about that one. There's so
Yeah.
it's he just whenever he pops up, it's quality.
There's a line
Yeah.
that he says in that that I love, where he's, you know, eating Oreos, and Matt Damon, spoiler for the end of that, figures out that like the way he eats Oreos is like a tell. Like if he eats in a certain way, he's got a good hand. But he's like splashing the pot. He goes, "I'll splash the pot in my club. I'll splash the pot out whenever the fuck I want." But he says it like in a very like Malkovich Russian accent, and I'm just like, this is great. This is cinema.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta say, Brian, because I think I think Con Air deserves a second look from me.
Well, check out Con Air the podcast.
Just Con Air the pod?
Yeah, they're
That's
doing
it?
instead of like a minute by minute breakdown, they're doing it like 3 minute
Chapter
or
by
4 minute
chapter.
chunk by 3 minute or 4 minute chunk.
I thought it's in a chapter. I think it's chapter.
No, it's not chapter because there's not enough. I was just a guest on that.
Okay.
It'll actually be out as this comes out probably next week. And I was like, this doesn't feel like an entire chapter, but they're just chunking it up because there's not enough chapters on the Blu-ray for them to be happy.
I thought you were going to say there's not enough podcasts about Con Air. There's only 8, but there's only 8 Con Air podcasts right now, so we need a 9th.
Well, there's apparently a site like Podcast Minutes or Minute Podcast or something where it's just like it's a collection of all the different shows that break down movies by minute.
You know what movie I love him in, and this is around the same time. I don't know if it was 99, but it was around 99. It's this random it's my favorite HBO original movie, and it's one that nobody remembers, but it's called RKO 281 about the making of Citizen Kane.
Yes,
and he plays.
That was 99.
Yeah, he plays Mankiewicz in that, and he just has some great stuff with Liev Schreiber as Orson, and that movie was so much of my identity at the time.
Yes.
It's really embarrassing how much of my identity back in that time period was taken from.
It's a 99 movie, Joey. It's an HBO. It's a TV movie.
I'm looking at it right now.
It is
the
greatest. The greatest made for HBO movie ever. And when they were coming out with Mank, I was like, yeah, I'm going to see this because it's Wells related, but I'm like, it's not going to be anywhere close to RKO 281. And I enjoyed it, but I'm like, it's not RKO 281.
Well, it's still on HBO Max if you want to go.
I got to get back to what I was saying to Brian in the first place. Before I do that, by the way, Joey, we're gonna see Orson Welles fictionally portrayed in a movie later on in this podcast.
There's also, by the way, there's another movie called Me and Orson Welles that Malkovich is in with Colin Hanks that I think Tom Hanks directed. Maybe that movie kind of stinks. It's not great.
The guy, I forget his name, but the actor who plays Wells in it it's a very good.
Oh wait, no, I'm sorry, I'm conflating two different movies. I'm conflating The Great Buck Howard, which kind of stinks, with Me and Orson Welles, which is a Zac Efron movie.
Yeah,
that
Zac
also
Efron
is not great, but yes, okay.
Yeah.
But Angus McFadden plays him.
In Cradle Rock. That's a 99.
Sure is.
Oh, are you guys gonna do that one?
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh, actually. I love that one.
All right, well, you know when you're coming back.
Oh, that one has a special place in my heart. Yeah, between that one and RKO 281, that was like, I had never seen an Orson Welles movie, and I made this man my identity based on Angus McFadden and Liev Schreiber.
But going back to Con Air, I have to say, and this is, we got very far away from that, but I have to say, I Con Air got overshadowed by Face Off to me.
Yeah. Also great. Also great.
Awesome.
It's hard to beat Face Off.
Such a great movie.
It's really hard.
So I need to go back and revisit Con Air because I don't think I've ever really given it the credit it deserves. I remember Malkovich being awesome.
Oh, it's great.
My two favorites, I've already said, one is In the Line of Fire. The other one is Shadow of the Vampire, which is like just one of my favorite movies. Period. And it's him and Willem Dafoe are both so fucking great in that movie.
Have either of you seen him on stage? I've never seen him live.
I have not.
I would love to see him live. I bet. I know he was in the original Burn This, and coming up through Steppenwolf, he was all kinds of stuff.
I will say I haven't seen him on stage, but I have seen a video of him. Like I've seen a recording of him on stage in True West with Gary Sinise. Yeah.
I imagine that's something.
No, I'm uncultured swine. I haven't seen very many plays.
Yeah. He's also great in Of Mice and Men with Gary Sinise as Lenny. But Malkovich, good stuff.
Try him today.
Brian. We're gonna get going, but before we do, let's see. So it is in a few days' time that a Star Wars is heading our way on the Disney Plus. As far as I've heard, right?
It is true. A Star Wars and or movie and or TV special. I'm trying to make a joke here happen, but it's not working.
I still blame both of you for not telling me that Andor and Endor are different planets.
Oh, Joe, I failed you so badly.
Is Andor a planet or a person?
I was like,
Andor is a person. He's the guy that Diego Luna plays in Rogue One.
Cassian Andor, the moon of Endor. Joey, when you tweeted that, and I'll say what I tweeted back to you, is sometimes, Joey, with you and I feel like we are absolutely nowhere. And yes, I loved all of Book of Boba Fett, so shove it. Anyway,
no, I mean,
it's like you can enjoy like one Star Wars show, and at the same time not like crap all over the other ones. Anyway, I've actually seen some of Andor, and I'll just say that if you're a Rogue One fan or just Star Wars fans in general, I would say you're going to be happy, but I'm like, are Star Wars fans ever happy?
Well,
No,
Rogue One is my third favorite Star Wars movie.
Yeah,
so
I'm like, you're going to be just
I
fine,
cannot.
John. Everyone else is going to like it for a minute and then start bitching and moaning on YouTube right after it. But you are going to be just fine.
Fuck yeah.
And we'll be back. Return of the Pod in some form. We'll be back for it.
The return of the pod.
Yeah. We're figuring out a little late in the game what our season's going to be. It's like I'll say we're doing something. So you can check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that. It's Return of the Pod. You can check us out at Twitter at Return of the Pod. And I myself can be found on Twitter at Brian Silliman, at BrianSilliman, also on Instagram and all the other places.
You're such a pro. You don't have to ask you to
I'm used to just going that thing at the end of the smash that subscribe, and it's like we'll see you next week.
Gucci.
But yeah,
well, I think,
always a pleasure, my friends.
Absolutely, and I think I'd love to have you and the rest of the crew back for Galaxy Quest. I think
hopefully with 100% less COVID.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I'm pretty sure that's a big favorite of Caitlin's.
Feels like that's in the wheelhouse.
It's a favorite of.
Wait, is Galaxy Quest the Tim Allen movie?
Yeah.
Okay, I saw that for the first time. I think
it's this year or last year. The Alan Rickman movie, but yes,
the Alan Rickman movie. It's the Sigourney Weaver movie. It's actually the Sam
Rockwell. Yeah. Before I knew him as Sam Rockwell, he was that guy.
So good.
Before he was Justin Long, he was that guy.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I know. I know Matt is a Galaxy Quest guy, and I'm almost certain that Caitlin lives.
I'm willing to put some heavy amounts of dollars on the prospect that she probably is. So
yeah. Is Willow a 99 movie? It's not, is it?
Hey,
whatever
actually,
year
I have a
Willow
question for you.
came
My
out,
friend just
that
asked
was-
about.
No, but check out Willow on Disney Plus.
My friend asked her for a
coming to
Willow
you.
Like, I
update.
didn't
Is there
work on
any
it.
Willow
Why am I
updates?
plug? Yeah, we got a new trailer
When?
at a D23 a couple week ago or so. Check it out on YouTube. Just like Willow new trailer.
It looks amazing. It looks amazing.
And there's
I cannot wait for that
Christian
show.
Slater is on it as a friend of Mad Mardigan's.
Yes.
Sorsha, my
Happy
first
Mardigan.
Joanne Wally, my first ever crush.
Yeah,
I'm cool with you, Mardigan.
yeah.
My first ever crush I realized recently was Joanne Wally and Willow. She's back. Warwick's back, looking great.
It is going to be great.
This is what nobody wants to hear, but I'm probably
excited
more excited for that than Andor.
I am too. Don't say anything.
Yeah, it's like Rings of Power is good, but when's Willow come out?
we get fired from the internet for saying this, but no, I legitimate, and I'm enjoying Rings of Power, but I'm legitimately more excited for Willow than I was for.
Yeah, it's do you realize though, John and Joey, there were other TV series based on Willow, so we don't really need another one. I'm going to beat that joke into the ground. So. And he was never heard from again.
Okay.
Anyway.
We are at the end. Brian, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for being John Malkovich with us. Malkovich.
My pleasure, sir.
I hope that people pick this podcast to listen to next episode.
Good teaser.
I'm doing that every time now.
That was good. Look out for frogs.
Look out for frogs.
We'll see you next time.